All right. Hello, I'm Nick Lisowskis, and I'm here to tell you a bit about South Shore Analytics and our core offering, which we call Clarity, the 90-day data stack. So I'll talk more about this over the course of the video, but South Shore Analytics was founded about 3 years ago by myself and my co-founder, James Burke. Um, I've provided various data analytics services over the years. It started on more of an ad hoc basis. We would come in and help clients build dashboards or build a certain data pipeline or help them get their data warehouse configured. But we've kind of evolved over time and started to offer more of an all-in-one implementation solution. So we'll come into businesses and build them out a full modern data stack. But it's more than that. It's more than just the technical components of a data stack. We really like to partner with our clients in terms of starting from, starting with the end in mind. So, like, what are the metrics that we want to be able to measure reliably as a business and why? Like, what are the decisions that we're going to be able to make with that data? It's important to start there so that we can work back and make sure that we're delivering something that's actually going to help you make changes in your business. And so our learnings from our early career and backgrounds and then early days of founding South Shore Analytics have kind of culminated in what we're offering with Clarity, the 90-day data stack. So I'll begin to walk you through this a little bit more and excited to help out as many potential clients as possible. So first things first, who Clarity is not for. So it's not necessarily going to be for those early stage startups that are still figuring out their product market fit. We love to work with companies that are earlier on in their life cycle, but if you're not generating, a significant, fairly significant amount of revenue, like typically the floor of companies that we've worked with is around the $2 million mark. We want to work with you someday, but you need to have a sizable amount of leverage to be able to make decisions with your data that will help your business grow. And until you've kind of established that product market fit, it might be a little bit early for us to come in and truly support you. We're also not necessarily going to be for companies that are resistant to making changes based on what the data is telling them. So we find that our solutions work the best for clients who have an open mind, like they're willing to make changes to their business operations, and will see performance improvements if they're willing to have an open mind about what the data is telling them and not just rely on maybe preconceived notions or gut feel as they might have done in the past. Like, we're trying to unlock a different way of doing things by implementing the Clarity data stack for you. And then lastly, those who are dead set on using a particular suite of tools, especially when it comes to like recent days, there's a lot of buzz obviously around AI and machine learning, and those things are amazing and like have their place in your company. But when it comes to data specifically, we found that most companies are going, starting at kind of like what we would call level one on the data maturity framework. And then, there's various levels where a lot of companies kind of want to jump to the AI ML level, which we consider level 5 at South Shore. Um, but until you have a really solid foundation in terms of all of your data is in one place, you can access it quickly, you feel highly confident and can trust the, numbers that are being displayed in your reports. That's what we consider like a level 3. And we think that is the biggest unlock for the vast majority of companies that are early on in their analytics journey. Until you can kind of do that, focusing on some of those more advanced, AI and ML is just, getting a little bit out in front of you, like too far ahead of yourself before, making sure that you can feel extremely confident in the data that you're feeding those models. And so that's how eventually you'll unlock the most value from those more sophisticated tools in the future. Um, but who we are for. So we found a lot of success helping out portfolio companies backed by smaller to mid-market private equity firms, seed to Series A to sometimes Series B stage startups. So, like I said, companies that are doing kind of anywhere from like that 2 million to $100 million in revenue range. Obviously, a pretty large range there, but as long as you've demonstrated a significant amount of traction, we feel that we can be a really good fit to help you out. And then, once you start to get maybe above that $100 million revenue mark, it's more likely that you kind of already have a full internal team that's helping you out with these services. So we really like to hone in on that sweet spot of companies that have significant traction and can benefit from like a larger unlock from their analytics capabilities, but haven't quite gotten there yet. So at the end of the day, we're looking to help companies that, where the right data can unlock the next level of growth for them, next level of efficiency, and ultimately next level of valuation for their company. So one sign that what we're offering might be for you is that you're currently wondering how you're going to empower your business and teams to make smarter, more well-informed decisions. So oftentimes executives have a kind of a clear sense of what they want the strategy of the company to be. But a lot of times it might be harder to empower lower level members of the team to make their own decisions. And if you can empower them with data to make their own data-driven decisions, then you can really unlock the velocity and efficiency of the decisions that people all across your organization are making. You might be finding the need to check five or more separate systems to find what seem to be basic reporting metrics. So maybe you're clicking into Salesforce, and then you're clicking into NetSuite, and then you're clicking into your Google Ads account, and trying to get a sense of the health of your business from all of these locations, but it's a very manual effort today. You want to reduce the time it takes to prepare reports. So similarly, maybe you're manually downloading data from each of those sources and then trying to compile it in an Excel file to share with others, which takes a lot of time. It's error prone, and just causes a lot of headaches when it comes to trying to understand the health of your business. And then again, along the same lines, you want to make it possible for your team to get near real-time feedback. That's a huge value add that we'll bring to the table for you, is basically eliminating that time wasting effort, eliminating that propensity to drive errors in your reporting, and at the same time making everything essentially real time and at your fingertips in one location. Most of all, you're wondering how the heck you're going to introduce a data-driven culture to a business that has been run by gut feel for its entire existence. So honestly, not a problem that a lot of companies are run by gut feel. Usually the founder or C-suite has a really strong direction for what the company needs to do next based on their past experiences and just their knowledge of the business. But to really unlock that next level of growth and valuation is where building a data-driven culture is imperative. So it's not just about your executive team being able to see the metrics that matter to them on a regular basis. That is super important, but it's also about figuring out ways to introduce data into all of the individuals on your team. Maybe just as an example, you have a marketing manager and you want that person to be able to have real-time insight into how all of the different campaigns for the team are performing. And maybe one person is working beneath that marketing manager and strictly managing Google Ads, just an example. But you can build a way and train the team to start to double click into their areas of focus so that they can make sure that they're doing the best that they can within their responsibilities. So while the executives might be looking at all of your financial metrics or high level operational metrics, some top level marketing metrics, person who's managing Google Ads campaigns can click into the same place, but really double click into how much revenue has been driven by this campaign, or what's our customer acquisition cost on XYZ campaign, and start to tweak their strategy for their specific job. And that's what we're trying to go for, is not just high level reporting, but empowering everybody in your organization to use data, to improve the way that they do their jobs. So one last kind of segue here before I move on is when I worked at Uber earlier on in my career for about 2.5 years, one thing that really stood out to me was that my first week on the job there, everyone learned, everyone received training modules to learn SQL and how to use the different like dashboarding tools that Uber offered for the company. And so right from day one, they're instilling kind of this data-driven mindset into all of their employees. So I had a bit of background in SQL already from my first job, but I thought that was amazing that they were teaching everybody who came in, regardless of you're working in sales or if you're working in operations or if you're on the finance team, you're learning how to pull your own data. And I don't think that every organization necessarily needs to get to that level where everybody is technically competent and knows SQL, for example. But if you can learn how to use the tools and be data literate with the tools that have been provided for your business and that will help build with this clarity process, that can go a long way in reducing inefficiencies in your company. So again, back to that example, if I'm uh, the marketing manager and I've learned how to use the tools that have been provided to me, I can answer my own questions without having to maybe go ask like the one or two analysts that we have on the team. And so that's what we're really trying to work towards with the Clarity program. And, ultimately, what we want you to finally have is the simplest path to having the facts, the ability to make a clear plan to achieve the goals that you have set for your business or your organization. We want you to understand what are the true drivers of your business's success. So everybody wants to increase revenue, but like what are the levers that are building up to revenue and how can you actually drive change to those levers? And most importantly, we just want you to have access to the metrics that matter, visible in real time, and trusted by everyone. That level of trust is massive when it comes to data because it's very easy to lose trust if you start to get automated reports where the data doesn't line up or directly conflicts with what you know to be true. So that's one of the main things that we prioritize from day one in this Clarity program. So just a bit more about myself quickly. So I'm Nick Lisowskis. I started my career in healthcare consulting at a firm called Healthscape Advisors here in Chicago. Worked there for about 3 years before moving to Uber, where I worked as a market launcher for their bike share program called Jump Bikes. And then I worked as a business analyst on the enterprise sales operations team for Uber Eats. Um, and in those first two roles, I learned a lot of technical skills from an analytics perspective. Was more of a data analyst, so a lot of SQL. I learned a lot of different data visualization tools, so Tableau, a little bit like some of the internal tools that Uber offered. I learned a lot of Excel modeling. And eventually I moved on to Amazon, where I got into more of a data engineering focused role. So I learned a lot about how data pipelines are constructed and transformation of data to make it easier for downstream data analysts and data scientists to consume that data. So I had these kind of like very similar but slightly different experiences across these companies that led me to have a pretty clear understanding of the entire data lifecycle end to end. So how you ingest data, how you clean up that data and store it, how you produce that data for analysts and business stakeholders to consume in ways like a dashboard or an automated report. And that led myself and James Burke, my co-founder, to found South Shore Analytics about three and a half years ago. James's background was in investment banking and in the startup world. And so we felt that we had very complementary skill sets and a keen interest in data. And that's kind of what led us to found this company. Just a few pictures of myself. So on the top there, you can see me and my son Vincent visiting the Billy Goat Tavern on Lower Michigan Ave, I believe, in Chicago. And then to the right, just me and my family celebrating Easter. And then I love to get outdoors and ski, do any sort of outdoor recreational activity, really. So this is a picture of me skiing in Canada, I believe that was. Um, and I mentioned a bit about how we got here, but really when we first started our consulting work, everything was very ad hoc. So we were fixing broken dashboards, untangling poor setups, trying to make sense of systems that weren't built to scale. And so it was, that was good work for us to really build up our experience. We were able to help clients fix problems that already existed in their organization. But the light bulb went off for us that most companies don't need another patch job. They honestly need a clean and clear foundation. So, we love to find clients that are either just beginning their analytics journey or have had their eyes open to the fact that what they're doing today isn't working and they really want to start from scratch and build something that is scalable and built to stay for years, hopefully decades. And obviously there will be evolution along the way, but we want to build something that's going to be a lasting uh, backbone for the way that your company makes business decisions moving forward. Um, and so, I've touched on this a little bit already, but the way that we got here is really had this experience with kind of like, uh, how big tech does data. Um, Everything is, there's a lot of mess in big tech data systems, but there's also a lot of best practices that are followed. The best tools that money can buy are used by these companies. And so James and I learned a lot about how the Ubers and the Amazons and, you know, Fortune 500 companies of the world are doing data. And there's a lot to like, there's a lot to not like so much. But lots of good learnings in those roles. And then we kind of went on to the next level of starting South Shore Analytics, and no clear plan was in place. So we would come to these businesses that saw the value of data and tried to get something set up, but things were extremely scattered. Nobody on the team necessarily knew how or where to go to pull the data that they needed, because things were very disorganized and oftentimes unreliable from an accuracy perspective. And so that has led us to building Clarity, which is basically bringing, the positives of big data to smaller businesses. So we're not necessarily dealing with extremely small businesses here, but we are dealing with companies that don't have the same enterprise level resources that an Uber or an Amazon or a Google has. But with the way that things have advanced over the past several years, not just with AI, but with data related tooling, it becomes a lot more feasible to actually bring, 80% to 90% of the level of sophistication that those largest companies have to smaller companies. And so that's what we're looking to do with Clarity. So I've alluded to this a few times, but the old way of doing things when it comes to data, a lot of times is run in Excel or spreadsheets. Excel has tons of merit, right? Like it's the gold standard for financial modeling. But oftentimes, what we find in companies that haven't put a robust analytics platform in place is that they're pulling data from a bunch of manual places and trying to weave it all into an Excel report, and it's super manual, time consuming, and error prone. So, I just said some of these things, but manual, CSV download, errors, and no trust ultimately. And that's the hardest part of the time waste is a big problem that we help solve, but I think the biggest thing that we help solve is the lack of trust in data. So you can't make informed data-driven decisions if you don't believe what the data is telling you. And so that's where, in the kind of new way of doing things with Clarity, we get everything, we work to make everything centralized and cloud-based. So there's no more, copy and pasting items into Excel and running manual calculations. Like we're doing that heavy lifting before the data gets presented to the location that you will go to access the data. Everything is automated. Um, and, ultimately, we are testing your data. So data quality. So we build in checks into the health of your data pipeline to make sure that you're getting your data from the various sources that your business relies on time, but also that that data is accurate. And ultimately, where we're getting is trust. So we've checked your data; it's running on a nightly basis reliably. We've tested that key metrics like your revenue are within some expected range of where they typically are on a daily basis. And so 99% of the time, you know that what you're seeing in your dashboards and your automated reporting is fully up to date and accurate. And for that 1 to 2% of the time where it's not, because this is a technical process, thing like errors do come up from time to time, but we make sure that you're aware of that so that you're not just blindly using data that is not up to date or inaccurate. Like you're being notified when there are situations that, you need to take a few hours and not use this data yet until something is fixed. And so I think just building that level of trust is what really helps companies feel empowered to make data-driven decisions moving forward. And so when you get this system right, when you work with us to implement clarity into your business, you'll be able to ensure that your key decision makers have the data they need at their fingertips. We have found that in the vast majority of cases, we're able to deliver on this promise within 90 days. And so that's why we call it the 90-day data stack. Obviously, things can vary a little bit depending on your business's specific needs, but that's what we really strive for so that we can kind of revamp the way that you make decisions in a quarter or less. Um, One of the things that we like to help our clients out with is creating a cadence and routine to monitor performance. So, again, back to my time at Uber, something that I thought was very insightful about the way that they run their business is that each team kind of set their own KPIs and goals that they were working to achieve and would have weekly, monthly, quarterly business reviews. So they're literally checking how are they trending against these goals for each metric and talking about what are the operational levers that we can pull to actually make a dent in this metric. And so that's something that, we like to help out our clients with installing that type of process so that they're not just, having a dashboard that's been built for them, and has a lot of great information on it, but we don't know how to use it or put it into practice. We want to empower your teams to put that information into practice. And so at the end of the day, we elevate your business through analytics. Our goal is to help you move from data chaos to making decisions with confidence through clarity. And so how do we do this? How does clarity work? It happens in basically three phases. So phase one, we call uncover value. It's basically understanding where does your data live and what is the value that you can glean from your data. And then we move on to what we call the unlock growth phase. This is where we're doing the heavy lifting, the implementing. We're getting your data into a centralized location. We're cleaning it up. We're building nice automated dashboards, automated alerts, email reports, all of those types of things that will be helpful to, help you drive your business forward. And then the third phase is starting to, generate insights from that information. So everything has been set up. We feel confident in the reliability and accuracy of your data, but now it's time to drive accountability in your organization and work on ultimately increasing your business's valuation. And so I'll talk a little bit more step by step here in terms of how we do this. And so I'll just write some helpers for myself here, but uncover value. We've got unlock growth. And we've got increase value. So the first thing that we do in the first phase is help you identify your KPIs. So what are the metrics that matter to your business and how are you going to impact them? So like I was mentioning earlier, most companies probably care about their top line revenue, and that's totally normal and likely that will be one of the primary KPIs that you care about. But we like to help you identify probably your top 5 to 10. 6 has kind of been a sweet spot of like primary KPIs, but then go down to the next level and talk about what are the 2, 3, 4 supporting metrics that actually have an operational lever against that primary KPI. So if it's revenue, it's, maybe it's your average order value or your order frequency per user and those types of things. And then we can kind of like take this web down a path to figure out what are all the things that we need to be reporting on so that you can actually make operational decisions and improvements in your business. So That's step one. We work with you even as we're just kind of getting into the onboarding phase, or potentially even before we've started the clarity process, to figure out what are all of those core metrics that matter to your business. And then we're going to basically audit your data sources. So if we look at all of the metrics that you care about and should care about to drive forward your business, then we need to figure out how we're going to get all the information that builds up to those metrics. So that's mostly about finding out what system they live in, or if, most companies have some sort of element of manual processes. So what we like to do is figure out where the source data lives. James and I have a lot of experience working with different tools to get data out of source systems into a centralized location. So whether that's using, various softwares that are on the market, or writing our own code to extract your data and put it somewhere else, we can find a solution that works regardless of where your data lives today. But we need to know where it lives to design that system. And so the next step then is we architect. So once we figure out where all of your data lives, we design a plan for how we're going to get that data into a centralized location. And we also take some time at this point to figure out, like, what is the end goal in terms of output deliverable for your team. And so usually that involves some sort of data warehouse and some sort of BI solution that will make it easy for your team to click in and see all of your data in one place. And so then when it comes to the unlock growth phase, um, this is where we really start to build. So, we build pipelines. So this is kind of what I was alluding to in step two, but we get your data from your source systems into a data warehouse. And then from there, we're cleaning your data. So once we've made sure that your data is delivering to your data warehouse and it's happening on a regular cadence, whether it needs to be on the hour or daily, depending on the needs of your business, that's what we'll take care of in the pipeline phase. But then once the data is in your data warehouse, we're going to clean it up to make it easier for you to consume and analyze in a downstream tool. Because oftentimes when we get data out of these source systems, it's very hard to make sense of it if you don't have a deep familiarity with the way that the source system structures their data. So that's where we do a lot of the heavy lifting to apply business logic to source data and make it something meaningful for your company. And then we're building dashboards. So this is kind of the, kind of the sweet spot for the tangible output of what we do. But this is where you start to really understand the value that we're able to provide. So you're going to start to see dashboards that help you report your primary KPIs and the supporting KPIs that build up to them. And depending on the way that we've structured the engagement, we might be building, just an executive dashboard, or potentially a series of department dashboards as well that can help specific teams assess their contribution to the business. And dashboards is kind of like maybe like the primary deliverable that we mentioned here, but what also comes into play here is like automated email reporting. So maybe you want to see a nice PDF report on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. We assist with that. Automated Slack or Teams alerts. So maybe a metric has crossed a certain threshold that you want to look out for. We can make sure that that is being notified directly to you so that you can take near real-time action when those types of things happen. So the opportunities are kind of endless of what we can do with the data once it's been, brought into the warehouse and cleaned. And so this is kind of like a big unlock, and that's why we kind of call the stage unlock growth. This is a big unlock for your business once we get to this point. And so then in the increased value section, this is where we really start to take a step back from all of the building and figure out, what does all of this mean? So, the first part here is just insights. So we'll take time to work with you to understand what your data means. Where do we feel the biggest areas of opportunity are for your company at this point? I mean, this is something that you're going to be able to see instantaneously. Like you have that context for your business and how to make decisions today. But once you see things in the numbers, you're going to be able to double click quickly into like, what are the next steps that we should be taking as a business. And ultimately from there, it's all about value expansion. So you've generated insights, you've created a plan to improve your business, and ultimately the impact that that has is to increase the valuation and efficiency of your company. And then lastly, it's possible to scale your success. So we might be starting with just one area of your business or maybe the executive level of your business, but this playbook can be repeated across departments in your organization. It's always possible to double click into specific levers. Maybe we've started with your six primary KPIs and two or three supporting metrics for each of those, but maybe you want to go into the next level, like the secondary level of two or three supporting metrics. So you can scale this framework as far down into your business as you need or want to. Maybe you're a private equity firm and we've implemented Clarity with one portfolio company, but now you see that this playbook can be fairly quickly applied to other companies in your portfolio. And so that's what we mean by scale success. It's kind of time to implement that weekly, monthly, quarterly business review process and use this as kind of a feedback loop to check your data, make decisions, test new things, and see what's working and see what's not working and keep moving forward from there. Um, and so just want to touch on a couple of mini case studies or past results, proof and wins that we have with this system. So some of our prior clients include a dental service organization managing over 40 practices. So, they had different systems for operations, finance, marketing. This was a technically challenging project because their source data lived on 40 separate remote servers. So we did a lot of work to extract data from each of those servers into a centralized warehouse, and we helped them gain full visibility into their revenue cycle health, their operational efficiency, their clinical performance in near real time. So, that's a theme across a lot of clients that we can help find success through this program is kind of that multi-location, maybe fragmented ability to report on their overall business is somewhere that we can really step in and help you unlock extremely valuable information at the organization level. Similarly, worked with a restaurant franchise group with over 30 locations, integrating their POS system, drive-through data, customer review data, marketing spend data, digital marketing agency. So they were, looking to report on the efficiency of the marketing efforts that they perform for their clients. So kind of an agency within an agency model there, but we help them track their performance across campaigns, accounts, teams. And currently working with a self-storage operator who wants to track their pricing, their occupancy rates, various sales and operational KPIs so that they can continue growing and scaling their business across dozens of locations in the United States. So these are just some examples, but looking forward to working with your company to drive another next series of wins as well. So just wanted to talk quickly through the types of tooling that we use to make this happen. So Orchestra is kind of a tool that runs the whole show. So Orchestra allows us to schedule and automate the data extraction process. So we're getting data out of your source systems and into a centralized location. And so the way that we get that data out of your source systems is typically going to be using Python. So we'll write custom code if needed, or we'll use a tool like Airbyte, which has pre-built connectors to extract data out of your system. And then we can load that information into a centralized location. There are various data warehouse options on the market, but we typically work with Snowflake, and so that's where basically we'll store all of your data from these different sources and departments. And then we work with a tool called dbt to clean up the data. So basically what happens is we write SQL queries on top of your raw data to clean it up, make it usable for downstream analysis. And once we've done that work, we send the data back into Snowflake. And so those data sets now live, they're analyst friendly and can be used for all sorts of use cases. But typically what we do as part of our deliverable for Clarity is that we push that data back into a BI tool. So we frequently have been working with Metabase and Omni. And so we are preferred partners with these companies and love their offerings, but we've worked with lots of other tools, including Power BI, Tableau, plenty of competitors out there on the market. But at the end of the day, what we're looking to do is find you a central location that we can train your team, not just your executive leadership team, but people throughout your organization, how to self-serve based on the data sets that we've curated for them in these BI tools. So that's ultimately what we're going for with the Clarity program. This is just another kind of visual of something that I wrote on paper a little bit earlier, but basically see ourselves as the premier program for companies doing 2 to 100 million in revenue and looking to make data-driven decisions a part of their everyday culture, driving a culture of accountability throughout levels in your organization through your data. And so if you recognize that your team is currently underutilizing your data and you're ready to transform your data from a nuisance to a true competitive advantage, that's where we can come into play. And the next step is straightforward. Just click the link below the video to set up a time to chat with us. We'll get you set up with kind of an intake form where we get into step one to start defining those KPIs and can quickly move into auditing where that data lives today. Would just love to show you a couple quick examples before we fully wrap of the types of offerings that we provide to our clients today. So these are just going to be some demos, but on our company website, southshore.llc, you can actually just see kind of an example dashboard that we had built. Myself and my co-founder James are both big sports fans in general. And, myself in particular, I'm a big hockey nut. So we built kind of a data pipeline to ingest live NHL data on a regular basis. So this first tab, we're just kind of showing some standings, showing an interesting way to look at conference standings by day over the course of the season, kind of an interesting way to see how the NHL season has played out. And another interesting way to look at how standings have trended over time in a conference, some deep dive stats into the conference there. We've built kind of like a team stats view, so a way to double click into teams. So you could think of this for your business as a way to double click into, let's say, a way to double click into specific locations or departments within your company and see how certain sales reps are performing, on your team and that kind of thing. We can also help you build custom visualizations depending on if there's something that you can't get out of one of these pre-built BI tools. So we kind of wrote some code and deployed this ourselves to build an interesting visual of comparing metrics on like an XY grid for teams, built a kind of like a rink dashboard showing a shot chart for specific games of where goals are happening and shots are being taken from. And then here's another example of a tool that we work with called Omni that I had referred to earlier. And this is, all dummy data, but basically an example of, if you were a private equity firm that had multiple portfolio companies, we could help kind of unify that data into one place. We have a chart that kind of shows like difference between actuals and budgets for net revenue, cost of goods sold, operating expenses. We have comparisons by portfolio company down here. We can get a breakdown of where revenue is coming from by subcategory or operating expense breakdown by subcategory. You can filter to just one company at a time if you'd like to, and have the data, refreshed that way. You can look at things on a monthly basis by kind of any date period in the past if you'd like to. So we'll look at by month over the last 365 days, how have all these metrics trended. And so this is obviously just a very quick walkthrough, but the flexibility and opportunities with well-structured data, which is all about that steps 1 through 5 that I walked through earlier. Like once you've structured your data well, you unlock an endless amount of opportunity in terms of automated reporting, dashboard building, and even eventually that longer term AI, ML layer where you're starting to make automated operational decisions on top of your data. So as you can tell, I'm obviously clearly passionate about what we do at South Shore Analytics, and would love to set up time to chat with you if you think that this could be something that helps benefit your company and really takes you to the next level of becoming a data-driven organization.